The value of time.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
We talked about appreciating the value of time. We discussed the importance of dedicating time not to harmful activities, but to beneficial ones. We said that the time allotted to us is very precious and must be treated accordingly. We explained that whatever a person spends their time on, in reality, they are giving a part of their life to it. Because as long as a person is alive, they possess time. When they die, their lifetime ends. Thus, time is synchronized with human vitality, and this vitality is tied to the soul. Therefore, when a person dedicates time to something, it is as if they are sacrificing their soul for it. Life is extremely valuable. We see that people spend large amounts of money, stay in hospitals, and undergo difficult treatments just to extend their lives by a year or two. When a doctor says, "Your life may be prolonged by a year," people are willing to spend their entire fortune, because the value of life is immense. It is stated in the traditions that except for prophets and infallible imams, no one can truly comprehend the value of life. In other words, it is an extremely important and vast topic. On one hand, we spend to prolong our lives, yet on the other, we waste 10 times that life on useless activities. Life is so precious that we are not permitted to dedicate it to just anything. Life has been given to us for obedience and worship. We must dedicate time and give special importance to acts of worship. But sadly, we often rush through prayer while we easily spend time on trivial and meaningless activities. While praying, we say, let me pray quickly and leave, as if the purpose of creation lies elsewhere and prayer is just an add-on. In reality, the purpose of creation is worship. Prayer should be primary for us, and all other activities secondary. Dedicating the least time to worship is a great mistake. Today's discussion is a summary and conclusion of the topics we have discussed over the past few weeks. That is why I am repeating some points to comprehensively conclude the topic. How should we divide our time? We said that we must allocate specific time for worship. We must allocate time for our family. We must dedicate time to communication with family members. There is a narration that says, if a person spends a few hours in sincere conversation with their spouse, it is considered better than performing ittikaf in the Masjid al-Nabawi. Ittikaf is when a person dedicates several days to worship in a mosque, abandoning worldly affairs. Yet sincere communication within the family is considered even greater than this important act of worship. Nowadays, communication within families has greatly diminished. When people come home, they are either occupied with their phones or with the television. After exchanging greetings, everyone retreats into their own world. This is neither in line with our national traditions nor with our religious values. There must be communication within the family. Sincere and loving relationships must be fostered. Thus, it is necessary to allocate time to family. Besides that, dedicating time to relatives is also recommended by religion. One should devote a part of their day or a day of the week to visiting relatives. Such actions prolong a person's life, increase the blessings in sustenance, and strengthen bonds of affection and communication. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, says, "Woe to the believer who does not dedicate at least one day a week to learning religious knowledge." Friday was established for this purpose, so that at least once a week a person attends Friday prayer, hears a hadith or a verse, and increases their religious knowledge. If even this does not happen, a person's spiritual development is impossible. How can someone who does not allocate even one day a week to their religion and religious sciences achieve spiritual growth? Some people cannot even make it on time for the noon prayer or Friday prayer. What kind of spiritual elevation can such a person attain? Where can they reach? If a person does not dedicate time to their religion and religious knowledge, they cannot achieve spiritual progress. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, states in a hadith, "Woe to the Muslim who does not spend at least one day a week learning religious knowledge." This is among the matters that require dedicated time. Allocating time for health, engaging in physical exercise, paying attention to physical and mental well-being as much as possible. Health is also one of the important demands of religion. It is essential for a person to dedicate time to maintaining their health. Additionally, one must allocate time for supplication and intimate prayer with Allah. Besides obligatory acts of worship, a person should dedicate part of the day to recommended prayers and sincere communication with Allah. It is mentioned in hadiths that the best time for this is just before the call to dawn prayer. The dawn is the most precious time for supplication and seeking forgiveness. The Quran also mentions those who seek forgiveness at dawn. This refers to the night prayer and the seeking of forgiveness during its qunut. Even modern specialists state that when a person raises their hands in prayer at dawn, positive energy flows into the body, positively affecting their mood throughout the day. Therefore, it is not advisable to sleep from the dawn call until sunrise. These hours are the most valuable times. If the day begins like this, a person's mood throughout the day improves. A person must divide their time properly and allocate a set amount of time for each task. The Prophet advised Abu Dhar, "Do not be overly stingy with your money, but be extremely stingy with your time, because money comes and goes, but once time is gone, it never returns." When a person gives money to someone, they investigate, who is this person? Are they trustworthy? I investigate so that I do not lose my money. Yet we rarely investigate with whom and on what we spend our time, whereas time surpasses even money in value. A person must be extremely protective of their time. Nowadays, people, especially those who know their worth and guard their time, are sometimes labeled as aloof. Let me give myself as an example. Sometimes when I pick up my phone, I receive hundreds of messages. When I don't allocate time to answer all these messages, some quickly accuse, "What arrogance! The Prophet would not do this, nor would the Imams." But one must reflect for a moment. If I were to spend my entire day replying to incoming messages, then my primary job would become answering messages. And that is simply impossible. Such an accusation has nothing to do with arrogance. A person is obligated to protect and value their time. This is both a religious obligation and a duty of humanity. If a person values their time, we perceive them differently. Yet the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, and the Imams, alayhi salam, also did not spend their time carelessly everywhere. I have mentioned this before. Unwan al-Basri wished to meet Imam Sadiq, alayhi salam, for a long time, but the Imam did not receive him initially. This was not out of arrogance. The Imam wanted to teach him that time should not be spent everywhere indiscriminately. Eventually, as recorded in history, Imam Sadiq, alayhi salam, gave advice to Unwan al-Basri. At the end of the conversation, the Imam said, "Now rise and leave. I can no longer allocate time to you, for my time is very precious." Some misunderstand and criticize this attitude. You should be able to come and sit comfortably, and the Imam should listen to you all day long. It should not be like that. Allah also revealed a verse about this to the Prophet, peace be upon him. Muslims were taking too much of the Prophet's time. Allah commanded, whoever wishes to meet the Prophet must first offer a charity. After this verse was revealed, the number of visits decreased. People developed a sense of responsibility and realized that the Prophet's time was valuable. Only Imam Ali alayhi salam continued to offer charity and visit the Prophet regularly. This teaches us that the time of great individuals is a precious treasure. One must strive to earn access to it. Valuing time requires discipline from a person. So what is discipline? Discipline means fighting against one's lower self, nafs. If a person decides to live with discipline starting tomorrow, they must necessarily fight their desires. There is no other way. A disciplined person is one who can subdue and control their lower self. Sometimes we try to resist our nafs only at the moment of sin, and often we lose. At the moment of sin, the nafs overcomes us. Why does this happen? Because throughout the day we have not restrained or controlled our nafs. A person who cannot control their nafs during the day cannot resist it at the moment of sin. How can one control their nafs during the day? Through discipline. For example, you must decide to be at work every day by 8 in the morning. Even if you are self-employed and own a shop, you must firmly resolve to open your shop at 8 every day. Fulfilling this decision requires serious struggle against the nafs. Otherwise, one day you will say, I'm tired today. I'll open it later. And another day, I'm not in the mood today. I'll open at 9. This is not acceptable. If you start your work at a fixed and precise time consistently, it will bring order to your life. Yes, for this you must struggle against sleep, struggle against fatigue, struggle against laziness. Discipline is the result of a person's daily struggle against their own lower self. A person who does not control their nafs during the day cannot stand firm against sin, because they have left their nafs uncontrolled. It is not possible to overcome the nafs only at the moment of sin. Controlling the nafs begins with everyday behaviors, decisions, and actions. Sometimes we misunderstand the path of religion and the rules it sets for living a proper life. Religion has its own path, and life has its own order. Yet often we simply complain that we cannot overcome certain sins. However, fighting against sin at the moment it occurs is not enough. A person must be able to restrain their nafs and keep it disciplined throughout the day. Life should have a military-like discipline. By military discipline, cruelty is not meant. Rather, order must be observed with kindness, love, and respect. After the age of 7, children should also be raised with military-style discipline, but in a loving and gentle manner. A child should love their mother so much that when she organizes their time, the child obeys and does not resist. A child's time must be properly divided: time for sleeping, time for waking, time for playing and resting. Adults should follow the same principle. Even if they sleep late, they should go to bed at a fixed time. For example, if you sleep at 1 or 2 in the morning one day, you should maintain the same bedtime the next day rather than varying it. Because nowadays lifestyle habits have changed and encouraging early sleep has become difficult. Even if one sleeps late, it must be at a consistent and fixed time. A disciplined person is a wise person. Order strengthens the intellect. Why? Because the greatest enemy of the intellect is hawa, desire. In a hadith it is said, the enemy of the intellect is hawa, desire. What is hawa? Hawa is the person's irrational desires and baseless wishes of the heart. Such whims of the heart weaken the intellect and control the person. Discipline stands against these desires. You must say to your heart, desire whatever you want, but I will act according to my schedule. I must do this task at this time. When there is discipline, the nafs is restrained, the intellect develops, and human understanding expands. Thus Imam Ali, alayhi salam, at his deathbed, in his most crucial moments, left this will: I advise you 2 things. Fear Allah, be pious, and organize your affairs with discipline. If a person is without discipline, abandoning sin cannot be expected from them. A person without discipline cannot resist sin. This is a rule. If a person does not struggle against their nafs, they cannot truly be called a human being. This is a truth, not an insult. So, what is the way to struggle against the nafs? Living a disciplined life. See how strongly religion emphasizes this matter. Scholars emphasized, to develop perfect discipline in a person, praying on time is essential. If a person prays on time for a year, they will definitely reach a spiritual stage. Even for simple tasks like trimming nails, a set time should be established. For example, trimming nails on Thursday night or Friday. This trains a person to live with discipline. Otherwise, living disorderly, trimming one week on Monday, another week on Wednesday, etc., is not right. A person must have a precise division of time in their life. For example, a person should decide that on a specific day of the week, such as Thursday night or Friday, they will trim their nails. This may seem simple on the surface, but the goal is to teach discipline. Taking a ritual bath ghusl, once a week on Friday, is also recommended in our religion. In earlier times, people would set a specific day to visit the bathhouse. For example, on Friday morning, they would perform ghusl and prepare for the Friday prayer. This too is intended to accustom a person to an organized life. If we consider military discipline, everything there is regulated by strict schedules, waking up at a specific hour, going for training at a specific time, studying at a specific hour, resting at a set time, and so on. The entire day is divided into precise intervals. Why is it so? Because a soldier must be ready to make sacrifices. They must be prepared to give their life and fully obey orders. To achieve this, one must control and master their lower self, nafs. A person who is a slave to their desires cannot make sacrifices. Thus, discipline is the primary condition for sacrifice. To obey commands, strict discipline is necessary. A person without discipline cannot obey orders. Our relationship with Allah must also be established this way. You must live with discipline, obey Allah's commands, and be ready to sacrifice your life if necessary. A disciplined person subdues their lower self and can thus show true sacrifice. Our religion encourages discipline everywhere. If we observe the rules of congregational prayer, we see how much strict discipline is required. Rows must be perfectly aligned. No one should stand ahead or behind. Everyone must respond to the Imam's takbir simultaneously. When the Imam goes to prostration, all should move together and rise together. Unfortunately, we often fail to maintain this discipline because discipline is generally weak in our lives. In fact, a person's behavior in congregational prayer reflects their overall way of life. Even in prayer, order is required. If the Imam prostrates, you must prostrate too. If the Imam rises, you must rise. Even if you want to extend your supplication in kunut, you must not. Recitation should be said quietly, not loudly. After the prayer, when the Prophet's name is mentioned, salawat should be recited aloud. This is also part of maintaining discipline. There is magnificent discipline even during the Hajj pilgrimage. During tawaf, the shoulder must not turn away from the Kaaba. One cannot exit from random directions. Sa'i between Safa and Marwa has specific rules. All these rules train a person in discipline. A disciplined life is the first condition for restraining the nafs. The beginning of spiritual growth and mystical enlightenment starts from here. Therefore, children must be taught a disciplined lifestyle from an early age. For example, a child wants to play. They have the right to play, but playtime must also be limited. You will play for 20 minutes. When 20 minutes are over, you must stop. A child must get used to the idea that every activity has a set time. Of course, today's games are mostly individual, while earlier collective games were more beneficial because group games taught children cooperation, teamwork, and discipline. Today's individualistic games, however, push people toward isolation, selfishness, and self-centeredness. Therefore, children should be encouraged to participate in group activities. Now we see that everyone sits behind a computer and acts individually. This situation individualizes and liberalizes society. Everyone is forced to think only about themselves and serve only their own interests. However, people must live within a certain framework of discipline. This is directly connected to piety, taqwa. Spiritual wisdom, irfan, also begins from here. A person must set a program for themselves, taking their abilities and capacities into account. For example, I can say, every day I will engage in recommended worship for 20 minutes. Before sleeping, I will reflect and hold myself accountable. I will not stay up later than a certain hour at night. At noon, I will rest at a set time. All of these should be predetermined and implemented with discipline. A person's worship must also be orderly. It should not be that one worships only when bored or in the mood. There should be a regular, even brief, daily worship schedule. Even 10 minutes a day, if done consistently, is more effective than occasional lengthy worship once a month. Discipline prevents rebellion, tughyan. In the Quran, Surah Al-Alaq, it is said, Indeed, man transgresses when he sees himself self-sufficient. When a person does not submit to time and discipline, they rebel. When a person acknowledges their dependence on time and life's flow, they become humble. A person must divide their time correctly and do everything at the appropriate time. Religion has given clear instructions on this matter. In family relations, in worship, in work and rest. Even recommended mustahab acts should be performed with discipline. It is also important to recognize each stage of life. In the first 7 years, a child should be given freedom but supervised. In the second 7 years, the child should be raised with military discipline, obedience, and order. In the third 7 years, the child should be treated as an advisor and consultant. If these stages are properly managed, a person will become truly wise, disciplined, and responsible. From childhood, it must be explained to the child. Childhood has its own characteristics. Youth has its own characteristics. Old age has its own characteristics. In youth, emotions and feelings are very strong. For example, a young man falls in love and says, "If they don't let me marry this girl, I will kill myself." It must be explained to him that these feelings are temporary. This passion will fade within 2 or 3 years, because this is a passing phase typical of a certain stage of life. However, it is difficult to explain this to a young person, because they say, "I am in love, you cannot understand me." If a person understands the different stages of life and their characteristics, they will also understand the value of time. At the end, I want to touch on one more point. A person must understand the demands of the time they live in. This is extremely important. One of the most relevant issues is that a person must constantly think, what does this time demand from me? What issues are most relevant in my life? For example, there was a time when Marxism was dominant and many books were written. Then liberal ideologies emerged. As time changes, people's problems and priorities also change. A person must recognize the pressing issues of their era so that they can live appropriately and develop accordingly. In recent times, the characteristics of time have changed. So, what name can we give to the current era? In my opinion, today's era can be called the era of return to spirituality or the era of return to religion. How can this be evaluated? Today we see that many acts of terrorism are committed in the name of religion. Have you ever thought why people justify beheadings and bloodshed in the name of religion? Because religion is highly relevant today. As interest in religion has increased, many people want to conceal their actions under the guise of religion. There is also a warning in the hadiths. A time will come when people will recite the Quran, but they will shed blood while reciting it. Yes, this is the era of spirituality. This is the time to properly introduce the true religion to people. As public interest in religion has increased, various religious movements have also multiplied. There are negative sides to this as well. The number of those using religion for personal gain has increased. Fake religious leaders and movements have emerged. Abuse of religion has become widespread. But there are also positive aspects. Religion has become relevant. Humanity's need for spirituality has increased. Sometimes people say, all evil seems to come from among the religious people. But they do not realize that those who commit such acts are not true religious individuals. Because the value of religion has risen, many irreligious people have begun operating under the name of religion. Therefore, those who speak in the name of religion today must be aware of their times. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam said, "One who knows their time will not be led astray by errors and deviations." Religious scholars, theologians, and clerics must understand their time. They must know the demands of the time and explain religious matters using contemporary language and approaches. Because the times have changed and people's questions have changed. Religion itself provides all the answers, but sometimes religious figures fail to properly present these answers. This is one of the reasons why religion remains relevant. For example, issues concerning music, questions about hijab, social and political matters. All these must be explained in the understanding of modern times. Being aware of the times is a very important issue. It is vital to recognize today's most pressing issues. Sadly, some young people engage in heated debates over issues like head striking, cursing each other, as if this were the greatest issue of the 21st century. The issue of head striking is not a relevant problem today. A person who knows their time would not promote such topics. One of the most important contemporary issues is intersect unity. Today there are two major dangers. One group practices takfir, declaring those who think differently as infidels. On the other hand, some people climb the pulpits and slander the prophets. Peace and blessings be upon him and his family, wives and companions. These individuals sometimes speak in the name of religion, but behind them lie different agendas and foreign funding. Some weep while mentioning Imam Hussein, alayhi salam, on the pulpit, but their message causes discord and division. Therefore, I advise you, do not be deceived by every person who cries. Do not blindly obey everyone who speaks with emotion. Be vigilant, do not believe every word uttered. Recognizing the times and their demands is the greatest responsibility of today's religious scholars and Muslims. It is mentioned in hadiths that toward the end of times, the number of instigators will increase and they will deceive the people. In another hadith, it is stated that Satan grants a special state in worship to some misguided individuals. They perform prayers so beautifully that none of us can match the outward appearance of their prayer, weeping and in a spiritual state. However, our simple and unadorned prayers are more valuable than their seemingly spiritual prayers. Because we do not deceive people through misguidance, we recognize the demands of our time. Once Imam Ali alayhi salam entered the mosque and saw people performing recommended, non-obligatory prayers in congregation. He said that this should not be done, but the congregation insisted. Ali alayhi salam said, "Go ahead and pray, it is fine." Because he saw that insisting would cause discord given the circumstances of the time. Although congregational prayer for recommended acts is an innovation, he overlooked it to prevent division. This is an example of understanding the times. Recognizing the times is essential for the growth of religion. Today, extremism and takfirism, excommunication, are being spread to hinder the progress of religion. This is the time for unity. Whoever sows discord among mazhabs, regardless of their affiliation, should not be followed. Everyone can hold their own views and engage in scholarly discussions. This is commendable. But amplifying divisions is mischief. Especially in Azerbaijan, mazhabs have historically maintained sincere relationships. Azerbaijan is truly one of the rare countries where followers of different mazhabs have lived like brothers for centuries. Sometimes it is said that tolerance came from the West. In reality, for the Azerbaijani people, tolerance is not a new concept. Here, it is not just tolerance, but true brotherhood. Tolerance means to endure something even if you dislike it. But we have not merely endured others, we have loved one another. In all regions, regardless of mazhab, there has been great love for the Ahlul Bayt. In Azerbaijan, people of all mazhabs visit the shrines of the Ahlul Bayt. This is a tremendous value. Now some are trying to disrupt this harmony. There are those who seek to create discord among the mazhabs. Therefore, we must be vigilant. Such ideas are foreign to the spirit of Azerbaijani identity and historical mindset. They are contrary to our national identity. Those who understand the times must realize this. Anyone who is truly Azerbaijani knows that this nation has never been characterized by aggression, but by kindness and warmth despite differences. Of course, this is a topic that deserves more detailed discussion separately. However, as part of understanding the times, I felt it necessary to address this. A person must know that today is an era of spirituality. People are gradually turning towards spirituality, sometimes without even realizing it. Thus, we must properly present the truth and reveal its beauty. In this way, those with malicious and biased intentions among us will be disgraced by their own ugliness. The beauty of truth must expose the filth of falsehood. Carrying this truth and presenting it beautifully is one of our collective duties.